Okay. Well, hello, everyone. I'm Jaydee. I am a sexuality educator. I go by the Vagina Liberator. I basically encourage women to masturbate, to explore the depths of their vagina, to own their sexuality, to learn how to initiate sex with their partner, and to advocate for their orgasms and also learn what their orgasms are. So I have my master's in public health. I've been doing this work for over 7 years. So yeah, here I am.
Yeah, I love it. And I love JD always posts stories and has questions and people answering them. And one of them, I think recently was about masturbation. And then I know I had one up recently and it was about like how women typically in research masturbate less than men. And
Mm-hmm.
that's something where it's like, well, how many people are reporting? Is there shame in reporting? Which there is. There's there's some stupid shame around that. And we got a long ways to go as like sex and sexuality in the US here. We're ahead on some things and we're behind on some things. And so I think it's just really cool being able to watch your work and really seeing those different answers that come through like your daily questions or your daily polls, which I think are so cool.
Thank you.
Um,
And they're so random. I just do them for fun. I have like no strategy behind them most time.
and honestly, those are like the best types of posts too, when it's like this was for fun, I threw it out there and people are engaging with it and they're loving it. So I
Yeah.
love that too. So one of the things that you and I are going to talk about right off the bat is consent. So our first question that you and I are going to discuss is what is consent and what are the different types of consent? So I'm going to have you go first on that one.
Okay. First, consent is sexy. It can be sexy. And it's basically just letting your partner know your do's and your don'ts. I like this, don't like that. But I think it's complicated than what it needs to be. But yeah, it's basically permission, but it can still be sexy, and spontaneous at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's permission, it's sexy, it's communicating, and it is really about like checking in with your partner or partners if you're in like a poly relationship or something like that.
Right.
And I think that's so cool. Um, this idea of like consent is sexy and like taking consent back to like this idea where like we do need to talk about this and we do need to comment on this and we do need to communicate with our partners and our loved ones about this, and that there's not only one type of consent either. Like consent can change too. And I'm guessing you probably talk quite a bit about this, like being a sex educator. I know
Yes.
I talk about it like being a sex therapist, but I'm wondering, like, what are kind of some of the big messages that come up when you're doing this work when it comes to sexual consent that you hear from people?
People are under the assumption that if they're in a relationship and they are cohabitating together, that they cannot deny their partner sex because that may send a red flag that there may be cheating going on, and that's not true. I get a lot. Oh, I can't tell him no. It's usually from the women. I can't tell him no. I cannot not give him sex. That's going to be an issue. Or the flip side to that is, well, I can't start using condoms. We're having unprotected sex for so long. I can't make him start using condoms. He's gonna think something is wrong. And yeah, that's the issue because it can change. Consent is not always monolithic. Consent can be specific. I consent to this, but not this. We can have unprotected oral sex, but we need to have protected sex. Or I know in the beginning of our relationship, we started off having unprotected sex, but now I want to use condoms because maybe I don't want to be on birth control anymore, or or it's simply because I just don't want to have unprotected sex anymore. Our boundaries change, and with new boundaries comes new consent, and it's not that deep. It's just this is where I am now, and that's what it is.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Literally. And I love how you laid that out too. Like the beginning parts of a relationship, if we like somebody, like they're, or if we're intimate, sexually, romantically, emotionally, whatever, like maybe those honeymoon phases and stuff too. And it may be like, okay, well, I did consent to taking birth control, and maybe like things are changing over time. Maybe I don't want to put this in my body anymore, and there needs to be a different type or form that's going to work for me and my partner or partners. And I think that that's even like across relationships too, right? Like maybe in a past relationship, birth control looked different or contraceptions look different, and like now, like even in a current relationship, that can change too. And I think it's
Right.
cool, like just taking that in as well. And even like some other things about condoms too, right? Like people may not know that they're allergic to like latex or something, or there may be some different types of like, be it lube or anything like that, there could be certain types of like irritation or depending on like the chemicals that make it up, right? Where it's like, okay, I was okay with this in the past, and like now that I know these things, like, no, I'm not going to do this anymore.
Yes, I used to have one of my good friends used to always tell me, "Oh, condoms make me itch," and I'm like, maybe because you may be allergic to latex. So if that's your issue, that's just you may have a latex allergy, but there are other options on the market like non-latex options, which I love, and they're also thinner and they have a more natural feel. So going back into a relationship, that can be a reason as well. You may have went so long only knowing about one type of condom, which is latex. So that's what prompt you to start having unprotected sex. Now you now know that there are non-latex options and you're like, you know what, I want to try this. So there's a shift, and it's okay. I am a big advocate about condom education because a lot of people think it's just latex and then they're just magnums. And, magnums are so big and thick and bulky. It really doesn't, give people what they want. But if you go out there and you try different things, you'll be surprised of what you might like. And especially incorporating lube. That's a big deal with the women. Lube have this stigma that if it's not for anal sex, that means you do not get wet enough. And like, no one wants to say I have a dry vagina. But it's like it's okay. The wetter the better. You can use lube to assist and, help get the feeling that you're looking for. Using lube does not mean you're not wet enough, but the wetter, the better. So why not incorporate that? So even that, it's like, well, I don't want my partner to know I'm using lube. Like, why not? At the end, they don't care as long as everyone come at the end. That's the goal. So go for it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And that's one of the things too, like where it's like just because, you know, a person like with a vulva or vagina is like lubricated, right? Like they may be able to make their own, but maybe it's not as much depending on like age or in the past or sexual libido has changed, whatever. So it's kind of hard too because I know Emily Nagotsky talks a little bit about this in her workbook where it's like just because this person is lubricated doesn't mean that there couldn't be more or like you said, the wetter the better. Like proper lubrication to help with like reduction of like any friction or pain or anything like that
Right.
too. And some lubes just fucking taste really good. Like, why
Right.
not test it out? Like, why not try some different flavors? And that can make it more fun
And,
too.
and
So,
sensations of hot and cool, minty, tingly. It's
mm,
fun.
right. Flavor, sensation, like, why not? And I think that with consent and lube and this topic of thinking like about these myths with sex and sexuality, like if I need lube, like I'm a bad person or something's wrong with me,
Right.
is totally like fucked up. And it's
Yeah, it
just
is.
not true. It's not true at all. Um, and I think, and what I kind of see like with my work with this sometimes too with my couples or folks if we're doing like some BDSM kinky work, right? Like we might go through the yes, no, maybe checklist. Sometimes those maybes are yeses, and then sometimes those maybes are no, or sometimes those yeses are even no's. And so it's like consent can even change depending on like what you're doing and what you're interested in based on like that arousal too for the day.
Right. And then also, in relationships, because sometimes people have spontaneous sex, but speaking more specifically to those who are in relationships, consent doesn't necessarily look like hey, honey, can I do this to you? That's not always it either. Sometimes people have, conversations where they just know that each other are open to whatever. And then in the act, just keep checking in. Are you okay? Do you want more? Do you want me to stop? That is still consent. And even sometimes paying attention to body language. Is the body tensing up? Then, if so, maybe you need to back out, ease up, or start asking those check in questions. Or do you feel the body becoming very relaxed? And even then, you can still check in like, do you like it? And then, you can incorporate dirty talk into it. So it can still be, sexy and not so formal. So I think when people hear consent into sex, they think it's like a whole sit down conversation or an in-depth deep conversation, and it's not. It can be very on the surface. It can be very light, and you can still get your point across of, I like this, but I don't like that. Or you have the freedom to do whatever. Then incorporate your safe words. You can start that whenever, like, oh, my safe word would be lip gloss. If I say lip gloss, stop. So it can be sexy. It can be sexy.
Mm-hmm. It definitely can be sexy. Like, it's about this communication with consent. Like, let's turn it into like something that is going to turn us on, that is going to have more conversations, but then also in a way where we can use our bodies and we can use like not only our mouths to communicate, but both, and paying attention to one another's cues. And even if it's like foreplay too, like that can be something where it can really turn into like, oh, this is sexy, this is hot, like this person is telling me right now, like dirty talk, like I want to do you over the kitchen table, honey, or whatever it is, right?
Right.
It's nice to be able to just have that, like when that spontaneity comes up too, just putting it out there and sharing it. It's like, this is like me consenting to that, yes. And so it doesn't have to be so robotic, like, yep, you can do that, nope, you can do that, maybe you
Right.
can do it. Like, it doesn't have to
Right.
be so like unhumanistic. I don't know if that's a word, but yeah.
Right. I get you on here. I think
Mm-hmm.
the time when someone mentioned that
Mm-hmm.
consent for them can also change depending on their comfort level, and that is so true. So that's going back to the evolution of our relationship. At one point, maybe I was uncomfortable, but now I trust you, or I'm opening up more to you, so I'm open to this. Or it can be the opposite. I was so open with you, but something is going on in our relationship where I'm closing off, and I don't have that comfort with you anymore. Or maybe you shared the story, and so that person know you did this before, and it's like, yes, I did do this with that particular person, but me and you are not there yet because I don't have that comfort with you right now. And that can be a daunting conversation, but that's still a real thing. So consent can change depending on so many variables that's independent of cheating. So there's a lot of people like, why are you changing now? What's wrong with you? Or who's doing this to you? Or why can't you don't trust me anymore? It's like, no, it's not always about me feeling insecure of the status of our relationship. It might be something within me. Maybe I'm overwhelmed or stressed, and what used to feel good to me doesn't feel so good right now because maybe there's a mental block. So many, we have the pandemic going on, people with children trying to decide they want to keep their kids in school or out of school, the mask, trying to start businesses, still working, maybe unemployment. We have so many stressors right now during the pandemic. So sometimes sex is on the back burner, and we have to acknowledge that within our relationship.
Mm-hmm. Totally, absolutely. There's so many things that are happening right now, and like, absolutely, like sex and sexuality, there can be so many factors that play into it. And couples, like one of the partners wants to just automatically like blame themselves or automatically assume like it's infidelity, when maybe their partner has really said like never showed signs of cheating, right? Never has been never maybe cheated on a partner in the past. If there is like ethical non-monogamy going on, then maybe there are boundaries that are incorporated with those types of conversations. But it just feels like it jumps to like a negative of like, oh my
Mhm.
gosh, why are you cheating on me? Who are you seeing? And is there an affair going on here? And then it's kind of like, well, what message does that send to our partner too? It's like, well, why do we have to jump to such a negative thought or a negative event when really, no, there's all this other shit going on out here.
Yeah.
Consent changes. It can be sexy, and we have to be mindful of like those lifestyle stressors for sure. And one of the things that I think with couples with consent is just grasping that, like,
Mm-hmm.
and just accepting that can be really really challenging and really really hard, because then it might go back to some things like maybe even self-esteem wise, like what's wrong with me that this person doesn't want to have sex with me, or if this person is maybe masturbating more versus like having sex with me, like what does that say about me, when really it's kind of like maybe there's, with consent too, like you said, different types of orgasms. And maybe that person just needed to get off with like a vibrator or some lube or some sex toys or a fleshlight, like whatever that is. And I think that's a challenge in it too.
Right. And you also have, some couples when they're in the midst of an argument or disagreement, sex may be their solution, right? So I know, okay, we have an issue, we can just have sex. But maybe this particular issue is very serious and sex is not going to fix this. Don't touch me. And it's like that's another dynamic of consent changing, because for so long we've been doing it this way, but now I'm in a different space, because as humans we are forever evolving. What we accepted yesterday may not be the case today, right? So within that we still have to remind or give to our partners, hey, there's a new boundary now. You're not going to sex this problem away. We need to have a conversation. If you don't want to talk, you're not going to touch me, because sometimes we can have sex to sweep things under the rug instead of just addressing them head on and whatever. So consent is, it's up and down. It's a forever conversation, and that people just gotta accept it and don't be, in your feelings and jump off the deep end about it when that starts to change.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, don't jump off the deep end at all. And it's kind of like we're relearning, and with this pandemic and everything, like it's relearning these things and like how consent does change, and essentially like why that does change with partners. And someone commented too, like, yeah, that's really the concept of consent is super challenging in a relationship, and I would have never even thought about that. Absolutely,
Yeah,
because
it can be.
it's something that for all the reasons that you discussed and more, it's kind of like, well, is this our natural way we do things? Like, is this how we repair things in our relationship? Like, let's go bang it out and everything's going to be good
Hmm.
and we're going to be fine. And for other people, that may or may not work as well. Maybe like, I'm fucking mad, don't touch me. Like,
You're
don't
right.
go there. And that might work for them too. Like, we need to talk before we have sex, and then other people might be like, we need to have sex and then we can talk, or like things are completely fixed and we're good now. And it's just so interesting, like how many things, like with emotional boundaries and like
Hmm.
time boundaries, relationship boundaries, sexual boundaries, like tie in with sexual consent. And it's one of the things that I don't think, um, at least me personally growing up, like we didn't have sex educators coming into our school. It was the teachers that had to do it. And so I think that definitely paves like a foundation, but like there was no consent that was ever really even talked about. And so it feels like now, flip to like 2021, a decade plus later, like the conversation is opening up more around consent and just the importance of it, but also how it can be sexy, and it doesn't have to be this like almighty stressful, like negative, like sex negative or bad conversation if your partner doesn't like the same types of sex or sexual acts or certain things or whatever. And there's some things where with sex too, some people might feel a little bit different on certain days, and they may be like, well, no, I actually want to try this now, and they may negotiate or compromise, or like they maybe do an edge work with sex to like push those boundaries too, because they're exploring their sexuality more too with their partner. um,
I
so good
agree.
question too. Yeah. So I'm gonna put myself on pause. So yeah, any other thoughts on like that piece of it and those components?
Absolutely. In the comments I see, do you believe that consent always has to be verbal? No. Now, I'm speaking in terms of being in a relationship with someone, because I will hope and assume that you know your partner know you. So listen out, look for those, that body language, those cues. Sometimes someone can tense up, and if you feel that tense, stop. Or again, check in if you're in the act of it. Do you like this? Are you okay? Do you want more? It can still, like, that dirty talk, that sexy talk, just be sexy with it. Or over conversation, you have an intimate time or something come up. How sometimes we bring our work or our day home and we share conversations that we participated in or overheard with our partner, or maybe we saw something on television or read something or listened to a podcast. Bring those experiences back to your partner and have a conversation like, oh my God, I listened to this podcast and they mentioned this. Would you ever try that? How do you feel about that? I never tried that before, or I did. Because sometimes we don't always go through our sexual history with our new partners, which is fine. But then that might be that segue, like, oh yeah, I tried this before. Have you ever did that? Are you open to that? And that can still be a light and fun conversation. You can do it over dinner. You can do it over a card game that you both enjoy, or whatever activity that allows you to have a conversation. But no, it does not always have to be verbal. Just pay attention to that body language. Are you tensing up? Are they like turning away? Do you see that they are not their usual go with the flow selves? And if you have any doubt, pull out or stop and go from there. And then later during your aftercare, you can kind of check in and say, hey, earlier when I did this, did you like that? I mean, I feel like you kind of tensed up or whatever, and they'll tell you, I did. Because sometimes in the moment, no one wants to say anything because they don't want to ruin the mood. And sometimes, we silence ourselves in our relationships just to, so we won't ruin the moment, but we're going to revisit it later. So that's that person's personality, whatever. So that can be also going on. That's why checking in is so important. So you give them that space of bravery so they can speak up and say, I didn't like that. And it's like, oh, okay, so I won't do that no more. Or I did, but next time, can you like just give me a little warning or whatever? You caught me off guard. Have a conversation afterwards. But those are body cues. Um, Last question. No, don't stop. Do you think there's a such thing as oversharing in a relationship? I think when it's necessary. I personally don't agree with sharing everything about your exes unless y'all have that type of relationship, or unless it's relevant to conversation. So again, my previous example, maybe if you participated in a conversation or overheard a conversation, podcast, whatever, and you discuss it with your partner and be like, hey, so today I heard this, da 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 da, and then they will, share their thoughts and feelings about it. And that conversation may unravel much deeper. And then that may be a segue to, have you ever did this before? Yeah, I did. Really? What happened? Tell me all about it. So it just depends on, I would definitely say if it's relevant to the conversation, then share. If y'all have that type of relationship where you all can discuss the past without jealousy or insecurity, then go for it. But if you're unsure, then definitely wait until it's necessary for the conversation, or relevant rather.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
open forum. That's what I was looking for.
That definitely, when you said if you have any doubts, pull it out. Like that definitely needs to be like a post on your page because it's true. And even if we can do all the things and look for all the cues and pay attention to that person's like body language, we still may make mistakes. Like we're humans,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't verbally say things too. If we're trying to people please for like our partner's pleasure, but it may not be as pleasurable for us, and then our body tenses up. And whether or not like the person, even if they have their eyes open or if they don't for like a slight moment, like that can be kind of challenging too. So it's that balance of like, yeah, like it doesn't always have to be verbal or anything like that, and we have to be mindful of like balancing both and looking at our partner's bodies as well. And there may be a little bit of anxiety too in those moments to say something like you were saying, right? Like I don't want to wreck the moment here, but I want to say something, and my body clearly shows that I want to say something, and that can be really challenging for some people too. And And it's one of those things that I think quite a bit about, like with my couples that I work with. They're always like, I need some coaching sessions, and you gotta tell me what you like and what you want in the bedroom, because how the fuck am I gonna know? Like, I'm
Right.
gonna do all these things and I'm just gonna be guessing, and then essentially we're not gonna get to like our main goal here, which is to have a better sex life and higher like sexual satisfaction with one another. And so that's so important too. Like, as you're saying, no, it doesn't have to all be verbal. And just remember that our partners aren't mind readers too. And it's okay to speak up about certain things like when they arise. I know it's easier said than done. Like,
Right.
I know we don't just wake up in the morning, they're like, okay, I'm gonna tell my partner this today or that today. Like, it can be stressful for some folks. And definitely with like past relationships, I mean, there's certain things where there can be really intimate details, you know. And um my partner and I, like, he talks a little bit about like, yep, I'm not much of like that locker room kind of
Mm-hmm.
talker. Like, I don't do that. It just doesn't feel right to me. And if a partner or person, you know, potentially is talking about an ex like in a negative way or whatever, like that could also potentially be like maybe a relationship red flag. Like, if we break up, are you gonna talk shit about me? Like, are you treating your ex like with kindness here, and like the way you're talking about them or their body or different sexual or emotional or just intimate details of the relationship, I think is super important as well. And so not everything, like you said, has to be out there. And if there's certain things where it's like, this is a little bit about my sexual history and I want you to be aware of this because it's important for me, then like, yeah, go for it and share that.
Right.
But if there's really, really intimate details where we're like bashing our exes or something like that, or it goes down like that path for some reason, then that can just be kind of hard to navigate and just kind of like, wow, what's going on here? Um, and what was the other question that they had asked as well? I was looking at that. Oh, do you think there's such a thing as oversharing? So yeah, you talked a little bit about that, like depending a little bit on the situation and the type of person in the past relationship and what's going on there. I think there is kind of a balance of stuff. I think maybe sometimes whether or not our partners want us to overshare is important too, because we may have to ask and check in, okay, well, what are your emotional and sexual and like time boundaries about this if I do
Right.
want to talk about some things with my ex or some things with my sexual history. And depending on what that looks like or what that is, like we have to also be respectful of our partners too with
And if
that.
they
And
care.
yeah, and if they care, and if they don't care, do you really want to tell them that much stuff? Like, I don't. I'm gonna be like, okay, bye. I guess this is not your jam. That's cool, and to be respectful of that, and that can be really difficult too for some folks if they want to share, but then like navigating that part of it and being like, okay, I'm gonna take a step back here too. Um, so yeah, so
But
far we've covered, you know, what's consent? Does consent always have to be verbal? And with partners, like I think when you were saying this piece around, our partners are going to get to know us like over time and our sexuality and what we like and what we don't. And so, does it always have to be verbal? No, because it's going to be some of the things that are just natural. And maybe it's more important, like if certain things do change, like to revisit those conversations. And like you said, I saw this on TV today, or we were watching, or I heard about like this type of porn that's out there right now. I want to watch this with you and see like if it's arousing for both of us together, or like I want to try this position. I read about it in like Cosmo, whatever it was. And I think, like you're saying, it's about also connecting the two. Um, One of the biggest myths that I think is important to just address about sex is if a person is married, because I grew up
oh my
with
God.
both,
Yes.
we haven't even gotten into married yet, right? So I grew up being told that if a person is married to somebody and they have sex with them, they automatically like get that person's consent, which
I
is
hate
so
that.
not true. I hate
Yeah.
too. And then I've heard another myth from somebody else in the past couple years. Sometimes you just gotta have sex and give in. And I'm just like, if I don't want to have sex, I'm not gonna have sex. Like, if I
Right?
do want to,
It's
like, if you
simple.
want to have sex with someone that wants to have sex, like, so I think there's some really odd myths in those types of situations. Like, if you're in a
I
relationship,
agree.
if you're dating, or if you're married, what do you think about that?
I hate that. And that also, pushes the false narrative that our bodies are just for baby making. We're not supposed to enjoy it, right? So, we're taught that we're not taught pleasure growing up. If you know, if you think about it, guys, people with penis, they are taught at the start of puberty, at the start of sexuality or sexual arousal, that they can go and jack their dicks. And once they discover that, and they find out how to do it properly, they have an amazing feeling, right? Which can also lead to them delaying their first sexual encounter, which is another topic. But then girls, we're not taught how to express ourselves sexually or to have that release of sexual tension. So we have all this sexual tension is building up, building up, building up. All the while we're taught, don't do that. Good girls don't do that. You're gonna mess around and get a baby. You're gonna lay down and get up with something you can't get rid of. So we have a negative teaching about sex. Either you're gonna get an STD or you're gonna get pregnant, right? And all the while our male counterparts, they're being taught the opposite. They're being taught it feels good, you need to get as many as you can, whatever. And so they're more likely to delay their sexual encounter because they have an outlet. But for so long, we're taught, oh, just lay there. If you lay there, you're gonna get up with something, either an STD or a baby. So we're not taught pleasure. And so we go throughout our whole sexual lives just laying there and not knowing, am I supposed to enjoy this? Am I supposed to get something out of it? I mean, they're satisfied, okay. So it's such a big question mark. So then you go into marriage and you're thinking, my body is not my own. I have to please my husband and whatever. Then with that comes, if I don't, someone else will. They're gonna do what they do. They're gonna do what they do. It does not matter. And so then you go your whole life not knowing, I deserve pleasure. I can say no. I can say yes to this and I can say no to that. So I hate it. I hate it. Like, it's your body. It's yours. You can give it away if you want or keep it to yourself, married or
Mm-hmm.
single. It's yours.
Absolutely. That's so true. And it's kind of like this mentality of like, oh, boys will be boys. Like boys are gonna masturbate. Girls aren't gonna masturbate. And don't get taught about pleasure whatsoever. And that's one of the things where like there's different types of orgasms, right? And like there's been different people like that have talked on reality shows and that I've read like stories about and articles about of like women will wake up and they'll just have an orgasm and then they're like, oh my god, I thought it was only me. And then they'll hear from other people where they've had it too. And so when we talk to boys about wet dreams, why aren't we talking to young women or young girls or like gender expansive folks or anybody, right? Really, when it comes to their sexual health and wellness about these different kinds of orgasms, because that's a part of it too. I bet there's not going to be like a 12-year-old out there going to like parents or caregivers or whomever, like their role models in their life, and being like, okay, so I had an orgasm by like exercising, or I had a wet dream by exercising, because we're just, or not by exercising, like I woke up and I was
Right,
completely
right,
soaked.
right.
What's happening? Because we're not there yet, but it's like, why are we only teaching like one gender type about this? And really, there can be so many people and adolescents and teens that are experiencing this too, and that
Correct.
can be pleasurable. Like, why are we hush hush about this for some people, but then other people get to have that pleasure and satisfaction? It's so stupid.
It is.
Okay.
It
So
is, and it's like, especially when it comes down to like little girls. I know it's an unpopular fact, right? Like, according to research, guys are less like, well, they are more likely to delay their first sexual encounter, right? Why? Because guys can masturbate. They can release their sexual attention. Little girls, on the other hand, they are more likely to not delay their sexual encounter. Like what between ages 14 to 16 is the most prominent age a little girl have their first sexual orgasm. At that point, they're fed up. You know, they've been starting puberty since 11. They have all this sexual tension built up. No one is telling them how to release it, what to do with it, what they can do, what they can't. And they're like, I just want to just, they're getting ready to explode. But if you introduce a little girl, a teenager, you know, to first of all have that relationship where they can tell you, oh, I feel, you know, kind of good down there, or I'm feeling this way and whatever. Then slowly introduce them to the concept of masturbation, introduce them to a small clitoral vibrator that's not traumatizing, but you know, will still get the job done. And I personally feel like no one should know your body better than you. Why give your body to someone and you don't even know what you like? So now you're just there. You're no machine. You don't have to just lay there. If you're gonna be there, you better enjoy it. Otherwise, you need to get up. But they don't know that, and it's just like, okay, they're not dumb. They know it feels good because maybe they hear their parents. Of course, they're in, you know, pop culture. They see all the sexual content that we see on social media and in, you know, movies and films, etc. So they know it feels good. So they're like, okay, I just want to get this feeling, see what it's like. Then they don't know, oh, your first time being penetrated, it may be painful. So they're like, oh, it's not that good. But let me try one more time. I don't know, it's just a lot. But if we can just start with teaching, having that relationship, one, where they feel comfortable and feel safe to say something and it's to share what they're feeling inside. Then two, introduce them to masturbation. And then three, be truthful. Tell them, yeah, sex feels amazing. Sex feels so good. You should get all the pleasure if you're going to lay there. Being honest will help delay that first sexual encounter. But people think if you know that, you're going to want to do it. First off, it's going to get done regardless, whether you have permission, education, or not. We're going to, I've been a teenager before, we're going to have sex. It's just, it is what it is. But prepare me, give me permission to let it feel good, at least, you know. Let me know the truth behind it. Don't, because the more you keep lying to me about it and I know better, that's gonna make me want to experience it even more. But to get to that point, to our little girls, as adults, we have to get to that point within ourselves. A lot of women are not comfortable masturbating because it's been ingrained in us. Good girls don't do that. Don't touch yourself. God is watching. Why would you do that? That's so nasty. And so you feel guilty. You know, you feel guilty, but you shouldn't, because it's your body. I should be able to tell you what I like sexually before you can tell me what I like sexually. You know, I mean, sometimes you might accidentally discover something that I can't give myself, but overall, I should know how I orgasm, what position can get me there faster, how I should know all of that myself before I give myself to someone else, you know? Because the guys, the penetrators, they're going to get theirs regardless. They're going to come regardless. And you're just laying there like a dead fish, like, I mean, okay, I guess, you know, you're mentally not there. You're trying to maybe waiting for it to be over. Masturbate, get it, you know, find out what you like. We have a lot of questions. I'd be more surprised. I'm like, hold on. Good point. I think the shame is twofold because of the man doesn't perform to his partner's standard. It's super shameful. Speaking of, like, how do you approach the conversation about coachability over food? I am an advocate of telling someone what your likes and dislikes are over food or over a fun activity that allows you to talk, right? Because it takes the pressure off. The environment is already light and fun and it's not serious. Definitely outside of the bedroom, living room, patio, kitchen, you know, for something that y'all both enjoy. And think of feedback like a sandwich. Your bread, that's what you love. You know, we all love bread. And then the stuff in between, the meat, the cheese, the mayo, all that stuff, that is areas of improvement. Maybe I like a little less mayo. Maybe I want more mustard. Let's split that cheese in half. I don't need all that cheese. And you just think of it as a sandwich. You start with what you love. In the middle, you talk about improvements. I don't want to say negative. You talk about improvements. And then you end with a positive. Like, oh, babe, the other night, when we did this, it felt so good. Like, I love when you held me down. But, don't hold me down for so long, because then I feel too restricted and I want to, touch all over you. I love it when you do this to me and whatever, but maybe, calm down a little bit or give me more of that. Like, you did that so quick. I wasn't able to enjoy it. So you just keep doing that, usually with two improvements, because we're not going to say negative. With two improvements, follow up with something that you love, and you let them know that, because no one, think just for a second, step outside of sex. No one wants to hear they ain't shit. No one wants to hear that. It's like, well, damn, what did you enjoy? So make sure you just keep, that. And they're like, okay, okay. And then when you're in the act of it, that goes back to your sex talk. Like, oh, baby, right there. Oh, don't stop. Oh, I love it. Okay, okay, just ease up just a little bit. You can coach there. And they're like, okay. So I hope that answered your question. I'd be mortified if someone told me my sex was trash. So we don't say that. You're not going to say your sex was trash. A sandwich. We love our bread. We're going to improve the middle. We're going to add a little bit of this, take a little bit of that out. We're going to keep modifying that sandwich until we get the perfect sandwich. And we will. We're not going to throw the sandwich away. We're going to work on that sandwich.
I love that metaphor and analogy that you use. And I think I think that's so important. And like the sandwich compliment piece of it, like we got to add some positives in here. We got to make sure that we go back to validating our partners. Because if my partner was like, you suck at having sex, like, yeah, I do. I would feel the exact same way.
Right.
And I would say, like, okay, well, what do you enjoy about having sex with me, and why do you keep doing it then? So
right. Why are you still here?
Like, that's shameful, but it's also like, well, we need to talk about this a little bit. Like, how can I be a better sexual partner for you? And I need to get like some positive feedback too. And like, that's one of the things with my clients quite a bit. Like, even when they're just talking to me about work life stress stuff, right? Because if we're burnt out, like, are we thinking about sex? No, probably not. And so sometimes, like, when I meet with clients and folks and they have an awful relationship, like with their boss, they're just supervisor, not their jam, they don't click, right? We've all had one of those. Asking for like, well, can you at least tell me two things that I'm doing really well here with my work and my job? Because I need that reinforcement. I need that validation. I need to know that I'm doing well here. Same thing with sex. Like, yeah, there can definitely be feedback that is absolutely shaming and shameful. And sometimes it's like processing that, with your partner in therapy, if you are seeking help through sex therapy or with a sex educator, with somebody that you're working on these things with. But it's also coming back to that too. And be mindful of like, okay, we are on the same team here. We are not opponents in the bedroom. We want to score. We want things to feel good. We have our plays laid out. We're going to do this, that, and then the other thing. And boom, like, we're not opponents. Like, so I think that's such an important part to think about with folks in like in a relationship or being married, or if you're in a partnered relationship, a couple, whatever, that piece of it is super important to just be mindful of. So I love that you use the sandwich piece. Yeah, vagina start keeping during sex scene of a young movie, young person couldn't say nothing. Religious does play in messages and teachings of this.
Oh, here's a question. Why do you recommend introducing a toy to a teen as opposed to using only her hands? So you can definitely recommend hands, but I don't know how you would explain that without sounding like, because sometimes that is awkward for parents, to like, yeah, just put your hand down there. It's like, oh, like, am I, what? But if you can find a great way to explain to explain to a teen how to masturbate using their hands, go for it. With a toy, it's just simple. Turn it on and you just put it down there and just don't go inside. So it's just all about what you're comfortable level is as far as explaining and giving instructions. But if you can, there's no right or wrong. Like whatever your preference is or whatever your comfort level is, go for it for sure. But with a toy, for me, it's just like, yeah, just cut it on and just put it on top. Don't go inside. I'm like, okay, well, the hand, it's like, yeah, put pressure right here. I don't know. I don't know how to explain. I don't know if I'm being so graphic to a child. I don't know, but it all boils down to the relationship that you have, because you may have that relationship with your child that you can find those words, and you can say only so much and they get it and whatever, or maybe the relationship is still there, but you still like, you know what, this is my baby, I'm so uncomfortable, here's your toy, go on top, don't go in, goodbye. And lock your door or whatever your rules will be. So
Yeah.
that's a good question.
And some of the time too, like your kiddos probably have already masturbated with their hands without you knowing it. They just have.
Yeah.
And maybe that wasn't as enjoyable, or maybe it was and it was fun for now, but it's like I want to see what a toy's about. And there's this one movie called The To-Do List, and this mom, she did have that relationship with her daughter. Well, kind of like the daughter, of course, got uncomfortable because, right, it's a movie, and typical, like, if our parents are telling us about like our biological sex and like our anatomy, then they are going to be maybe a little bit uncomfortable. And it's okay as parents to use the words like the clitoris is a very sensitive area that really gets aroused, blood flows into it, and it's very sensitive. It's kind of the pleasure center of the vulva, and the internal piece of it is the vagina. And so it's just kind of like talking a little bit, like you have a couple sets of lips, right? Like even putting pressure down a little bit or just rubbing and stroking. Clearly you can sense my comfortability with this kind of stuff. But like, just like showing them it doesn't have to be a big deal. It's only as big of a deal as you make it. And
Right.
sometimes with parents, it's kind of like just practicing comfy conversation. So if you don't want to be looking at the person directly or your kiddo directly, like sit by side and maybe explain it a little bit, or sit like at an angle. It takes that pressure off. But it's okay to use the words like clitoris, labia minora, labia majora, vagina, vulva, urethra, just breaking it down. Your child is going to they're going to feel more comfortable actually coming to you and talking to these topics about sex, and their bodies, and to know it feels good. And so this mom, going back to the movie, she basically just gave her daughter a bottle of lube and had this lube talk with her. And I really love it because it's kind of like, well, if penetrative sex potentially is going to hurt for the first time for folks with vulvas, why not prepare them for that versus
Yeah.
like knowing this and withholding this information? Give them a bottle of lube. And you know what? They may feel uncomfortable about it, like in that 3-minute conversation or however long it is. The first time they experience sex, they're probably going to be really grateful that you gave them that first bottle. Like, it's just one of those things that we can be able to do and open up that conversation a little bit more about it.
I agree.
And a toy, yeah, like why not throw in a toy eventually too? Like here, like teens, like right when teens are 16, like you might throw them a big sweet 16. You might like hand them down a car or car keys. Why can't we give like teens like a bottle and be like, oh, we upgraded you to a mini vibrator or a bullet?
Right.
Why not?
Then they were like, when people who's interested in them try to come and get down with them, they know, no, my vibrator make me feel amazing. You can't vibrate. Nothing about you can vibrate.
Yep, yep. That's super important too with it. Yeah. And it's also like there's no competition either between like vibrators and sex toys and people and humans. Like there's different kinds of orgasms, but it's also like sometimes when I know that like this is the type of orgasm and this is gonna get me off, like my vibrator is gonna like do me dirty and I'm gonna love that shit all day and all night, like whatever. I'm gonna pick that. Why not? And sometimes it may be the opposite. Like, oh my God, I need my partner right here. Like, I'm just super fucking aroused because we talked about like our fantasies and we're going to role play tonight. And I've been thinking about this all day and it's going to be so hot and sexy, right? So it's just like those pieces of it are important too. Like the balance of it all. Like, no competition between orgasms. There's different types and they can bring different types of pleasure. So why not experience all of them?
Right. Like, I just want to come. That's the end goal, for us to just come and explode together and just, go to a euphoric place. That's it. Let's just, how are we gonna get there? What's our route? Let's figure out our route and go.
Yeah. And then we starfish like on the bed and like chill out on a cloud. What age do you think it is appropriate to start introducing sex to a teen? Folks, be confusing education with promotion. So when is right? That's a great question. I have my thoughts on this, but you answer first.
I think, now this is going back to relationship, definitely at the start of puberty, which for a vagina owner would be period. For a penis owner, wet dreams. I know you probably still gonna be doing laundry, so you start seeing little wet spots. I randomly asked my baby, my nephew, he's in the 5th grade. I was just being funny. I was like, have you been waking up and your underwear is a little wet, like almost like you peed on yourself, but you didn't? He was like, yeah. I was like, oh my God. And I wasn't prepared. So it starts early as 5th grade for the wet dreams and whatever. So I would definitely say when puberty starts, because my nephew, I jokingly asked him this question, and he was going through it. And I was like, did you tell your dad? No. Did you tell your mom? No. So he's over there having wet dreams and don't know what's going on with his body. Why is this happening to him? And he's like, okay. And so I was so nervous, and I started to talk to him about it. And he was like, oh, I was like, this is why this is happening to you. This is normal. I just kept reinforcing, this is so normal. You're not the only one. Your dad, because, his daddy is like his hero. Like, your daddy went through the same thing. He's like, really? He did? And I'm like, yeah, it's so normal and whatever. So at the start of puberty, for sure. And then, but it's like a, progress into that conversation, because you hopefully want to get to the place where they can just come to you and say, why my thing be feeling like that? Like somebody commented earlier and said, oh, when I'm watching a movie in certain scenes, my vagina starts beeping. So you want them to like come to you and be like, hey, why is this going on and whatever. You definitely want your child or the little loved ones in your life to come to you, because we all been in school and we know everyone has that one older cousin that do too much, tell too much, and then we come to school, y'all, let me tell you, my cousin said this and my cousin said that. Yeah, your cousin a child too, that's misguided, don't know much, and so so that relationship is so important. And that conversation is so important. It's scary. It's so scary, because you're like, oh my God, we're here now. Yeah, this is really happening. It's going to happen though. Time is going to continue to pass. So it's scary, but it's necessary, because you want them to get it from you, who they trust, who has their best interest at heart, versus the streets. Because, the streets ain't for nobody.
Mm-hmm. Scary, but it's necessary. That's another one you need to have on your feed, because there's so good content just throughout this conversation. And yes, puberty, and just being mindful of like puberty happens at different ages for everyone. Like some people growing up, that may be 4th or even 5th grade, and average age for kiddos that they see porn nowadays is 10. So even that's a big component of this, like to kiddos about this, like maybe even pre-teenage, because that's one of the things we also have to share and discuss and open up this conversation of like porn is not the equivalent of sex. Like it is 2 different things, and it's 2 different worlds. And kind of like when we're kiddos in school and we hear these messages growing up from other like peers, that are our same age, like that's not the same as like what our parents may teach us, and there may be miss with that, like maybe uninformed about some things. Yeah, puberty for sure. So I don't want us to get cut off by this Insta Live, because it lets you go for like an hour, and then like I'd have to trim it. I don't want to cut out any of this content, and so maybe we can do a part 2 of this if people want us to be able to. So put some hearts if you want us to do a part 2 and continue this conversation, where you can come back with questions. We can prepare some things. But I wonder if that would be something that we can kind of talk about too offline. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Okay. Well, yay, I see some hearts. So I want you to share again, like your Instagram handle, where people can find you if you want them to find you. I think this was a great conversation, and I definitely want folks to be able to follow you and follow up with like where we're gonna go and take this conversation next time.
Right. So my Instagram handle is at the vagina liberator _ hit me up, participate in my stories. They're super, super fun. That's where you can find me.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning
Thank
in.
you, y'all.
Well, thank you for joining me today, Jaydee. I appreciate it. I love this conversation so much. We'll have to do a round 2. So
Absolutely.
Stay tuned for that. And I hope all of you that tuned in, feel free to share this conversation, like it, send it with anybody that you think that could benefit from this. And make sure to follow up with us with any other questions and to see when part 2 is. So,
are you going to save this live?
Yep. I'm going to upload it right away. Yep.
Okay.
So, everybody take care and stay shameless out there.
Bye.